What's up? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Welcome back. If this is your first time listening, welcome. This is episode 2. Today we are talking to Ryan about the low point in his life, which was his divorce. And as always, if you get anything out of this podcast or any podcast that you listen to, please rate and review it on iTunes or wherever you consume your podcast content. Producing a podcast is time-consuming and can be expensive depending on what level you are at with your show. Hopefully, you can give me a couple of minutes of your time to rate and review me. Any comments, good or bad, questions for the show, topic requests, or anything you want to say to me, you can email me at nowheretogobutupnow@gmail.com. Don't be afraid to send me your own stories of your struggle or personal development. If they resonate with me, I may ask you to be a guest on the show or read your email on the show and talk about it. You can follow me on Instagram at nowheretogobutupnow, on Twitter at butupnow, and Facebook page is Sean Dustin. I have a website for the show, but I haven't built it yet. I'm trying to limit my costs until I know what I'm doing, or I hire an intern that knows how to do this shit. I'm learning how to do this on the fly from YouTube. Enough of housekeeping. Let's get to episode 2. Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Can't wait to hear your story.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so what you had written in the questionnaire that I sent out to you is, the bottom that you wanted to talk to, or the low point in your life that you wanted to talk to would be your divorce.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, I've had different ups and downs, but they've been, sort of specific to time frames. I had an accident when I was in my early 20s that, I had a few surgeries and spent some time in the hospital and stuff like that. But those are, I used to look at that as a low point, but as you get older and grow a little bit more and start a family and all that kind of stuff, it sort of recalibrated itself. And 2013, after being married for just shy of 13 years, found myself entering the divorce situation. And in the beginning, I think it was a little bit tough just because, I think everybody feels like a failure when something that massive sort of goes bad, and it's hard not to internalize it. But, in the end, it was a good thing for everybody. And, my ex-wife, the kids, and myself were all happier now, but it was a long road to get there. There was a lot of low times and, fought with depression and had no tools to handle that sort of thing at the time. And, so I started seeing counseling and started gaining some of the perspective and some of the tools that I need to deal with some of the feelings that I had and learning how to interpret them. And, what was a low time turned into a positive thing, because it's been a pretty big impact on my life moving forward now.
Yeah, divorce can be a tough one, man. Was it an expected type of thing, or it seemed, I read that you kind of drifted apart?
Yeah, it was one of those things where, I think just over the years we were consistently more, I think we were probably just growing in different directions. And, in some ways she might have been growing and I probably wasn't very much. I was, I thought I was a good husband at the time. Maybe it didn't get perspective until later that maybe I wasn't doing some of the things that I could do, but I was very attentive. I was always trying to make her happy. My mindset during my marriage was always, my job is to keep her happy. Her job is to keep the kids, or I should say it like this. My job is to take care of her. Her job is to take care of the kids, and then everybody's just happy. She didn't really need someone to take care of her. She's a pretty independent person. I think she didn't like me always just sort of, doting on her, I guess. And, maybe you could find a better word, but I was just, I was always wanting to do things for her. And what she wanted was an independent guy that was, did things for himself and took care of himself, and she could take care of herself, and together we take care of the kids. I didn't get that perspective until maybe a little bit later, but yeah, it was, we fought a lot. There was never a big event. There was no cheating. There was no, you know, violence. There was no, you know, anything like that. It was just constant bickering and arguing, and it was just unhappiness. And then we started building walls. You know, when the kids would go down, she'd go upstairs and watch TV, and I'd be downstairs and watch TV. And we would never, you know, we never made any time for each other. We just sort of lived our own lives. It was almost like we were roommates for a while. And then we had this brief time towards the end where I think we sort of made some, you know, some attempts and found, you know, maybe I guess you even want to call it the calm before the storm, but we found this little 6-month patch of happiness where we were sort of all about each other, and we were, you know, I think we probably both thought it would work. And then there was this weird time where she used to travel for business a little bit. She came home from a trip, and I could just tell something had changed in her a little bit. And, you know, we sat down and talked about it, and she was just like, I didn't miss you. I wasn't looking forward to coming home. And I had found myself having the same feelings. Like when she was gone on that trip, I was just sort of like, you know, I didn't necessarily miss her. I wasn't, you know, it was, we were both just having the same feelings. And we had talked about divorce so many times. And we had always, you know, it always just been talked, and we got past it and, you know, just worked through it. And I think it was probably me fighting more than her for a lot of those years. And my fight was gone, and hers was clearly gone because she was the one that sort of was the first one to really verbalize, like, hey, I think I'm just done. And I said, you know what? So am I. And in the end, I mean, we sat down for 45 minutes with a legal notepad, and we literally wrote everything down and about our divorce, you know, custody of the kids and, you know, bills and who's going to keep this and that. And we literally broke it down in 45 minutes. We really never went back from that. The divorce itself wasn't difficult. It was just the transition to a new life, me trying to keep this house by myself. And, you know, I've got 3 daughters. So I was, you know, all of a sudden I'm raising 3 kids as a single father. And it was that type of rock bottom where it was like, what do I do now? Like I hadn't written a check in probably 10 years. I mean, I didn't pay any of the bills at the house. I mean, she took care of all that. I just went and earned the money, and now all of a sudden I am responsible for everything. So it was just a, you know, a wake up call. And for me, that was, I didn't know that I could do it. I didn't have the confidence that I could do it at the time. And so that was, for me, that's when I talk about rock bottom, that was it for me.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's tough, man. I've been divorced myself, and it's not a fun thing. Let's see. So
no, it wasn't fun for me just because of the way it affected the kids. They were just heartbroken by it. In the end, it didn't take that long for them to sort of get used to the new reality, and they realized that I was happier and their mom was happier, and ultimately they were happier. But it was still, you know, when it has to do with your kids and you see them upset, you see them hurt, it's impossible for you not to internalize it and blame yourself for that. So that's where it was really the toughest. I mean, I was really worried more about the kids even than myself at the time.
What ages are your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
No, not at all. I've got a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old, and an 18-year-old.
Okay, so, and then you're...
One of my oldest... Sorry, yeah, no, my oldest is a freshman in college. She's up at Sac State. Then I've got a junior, going to be an incoming senior, and then I've got a 8th grader that's going to be a freshman next year. So next year I'll have 2 high schoolers.
And how did they, I mean, aside from, you know, the normal stuff from a divorce and sadness and, you know, feeling of loss and abandonment and stuff like that, like, how well adjusted are they, would you say? You know, because I grew up in a divorced home myself, and my mom was a single mom. My brothers and sisters were already out of the house, and it affected me pretty hard. You know, I was 5 though, so I mean that's, you know, you don't know any better, and you know I blame myself when I was a kid. So I just, you know, how did they adjust to it, and you know, what did you kind of do to, I mean, if everything went fine and they're all well adjusted, how did you go about that with your ex and yourself in facilitating it?
Well, Well, I mean, the one thing I should say is that even though our divorce was pretty easy, we still had the regular, fights between two divorced parents and all that. There was still some pain there from both sides. But the one thing that we always really did I wouldn't say we did it perfect, but we did a really good job of is co-parenting, and we would communicate regarding the kids, whether we were mad at each other or not. We would still communicate regarding the kids. The oldest one was the toughest. She handled it the worst in that she never would discuss her feelings about it. She always pretended everything was fine, like it was just no big deal. Whatever, you're divorced. Your mom was there, dad was there. That was her facade. But she acted out, and she did it in school, and she did it in sports, and she did it in that sort of thing. She just was. She would consistently get in trouble, and it was just behavioral type stuff with her. But it wasn't in your face, screaming at you. I hate you. You left mom, or any of that kind of stuff. She just acted out. My middle daughter internalized it. She sort of went into a shell. Spent a lot of time in her room. She's an artist, so she just really sort of sunk into her art. Always drawing, always doing something art related, and she's got a very small group of friends that even they only hang out every now and then. So she just became sort of an introvert. The youngest, I think she saw herself as the savior. She was the one that had to be there for dad and the one that had to be there for mom. So she was always sort of loving on us, and she was always the one that was like, can we all have dinner together tonight at the table? She was the one that was pushing that because dad wasn't. He was just trying to get through his divorce. The other two were just worried about themselves, and she was the one that was still trying to hold some of those things that she grew up with, like, having, even though there's two families now, she wanted them both to be families. So she was always sort of the one that was like, let's have a movie night. Let's have, I want to have dinner tonight together. I want to do this and that. And, I love her for that. And she's still in some ways sort of carries that power, but they've all grown up now. Now they're all older where, like I said, it's been 6 years. So most of everyone, we've all moved on and everybody's pretty happy. But, I think for the most part, there wasn't any real tragic type stories or anything like that. I mean, they all just, they all had their own particular struggles, but I think being that mom and I communicated a lot, we had one issue where my middle daughter went through some stuff where she was starting to, do some things that, she was cutting herself, and it was a cry for attention at the end of the day. And so we caught it pretty quickly. I think I was the one that first noticed it. I talked to my ex-wife about it. We sort of came up with a plan, and then we talked to her about it. And, when she became apparent we knew, she really freaked out, and she was like, I want mom. And I said, no problem. So mom came and picked her up, and they dealt with it. And we just stayed on top of it, and we communicated, and we just talked a lot about it. And I think that was always sort of that's always what kept us all sane, was that we were able to just communicate. And, even though we were divorced, we never let them pit us against each other. And we always stayed involved and let them know that no matter what happens, we're still here. You still have two parents. You still have a mom and a dad, and we still communicate, and we still love you, and we're here. And so, we didn't let things get too far out of control before we said, hey, we noticed something's going on. Let's deal with it. We've brought the kids into counseling, when they've needed it. None of them do it really full time or anything like that. But, when they needed a few appointments just to get something off their chest that they couldn't maybe say to mom and dad, they had that opportunity. We put them in front of somebody that they could talk with. And, I wouldn't say it was anything outside of the normal. It was, probably stuff that you and I have, because I'm a product of divorce as well. Probably stuff that you and I both dealt with at the time. I'm sure all of them blamed themselves a little bit, but we've always been very, very clear about the fact that, they were, if anything, they were the ones that kept us together longer. They were absolutely not the ones that were the cause of our divorce.
Well, that's good. It's good to hear.
Yeah.
I know my current girlfriend right now, we split up a couple of times, and we thought about doing it. I have a 19-month-old daughter myself, and I just, in a way, it sounded like a good idea. Two happy homes are better than one miserable one.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, maybe being a girl is a little bit different than being a guy, but I just
kept thinking about my situation and how I grew up, and I was like, I don't want to be that guy, you know.
Yeah.
I want my daughter to have the opportunities to see both of her parents together, at least for the first 7 to 8 years, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I've been working towards. And it's tough. Relationships are hard. It is very difficult to be put into a situation with somebody, especially these days when there's so many distractions, there's so many things pulling your attention, from dating apps to Facebook to this to that. I mean, there's all kinds of things that pull you if you allow it to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's keeping up with the Joneses world. The thing with social media is that everybody puts their best face on there. It's very rare. I have a lot of friends on my Facebook, and very few of them actually put their bad days out there for you to see. It's everybody's trying to, show you their best life, and it creates this deception in your head, like everybody's living this great life, and you're over here just living this kind of regular life, and you're like, man, how come I'm not as happy as they are? But at the end of the day, they're just, they're dealing with the same stresses and things that we are in everyday life. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you in terms of I wanted to stay together in my marriage, really just for the kids. I probably certainly wasn't close at the time in terms of me being the one that says I'm done, I'm out of here. I would have just stayed, as unhappy as I was. I would have stayed for the kids until whatever. I mean, maybe it was to when they get older now, when they're in high school, maybe a little easier. Maybe it was so they're all just moved out, and we were like, okay, let's just go our own separate ways. But so I don't think I would have pulled the trigger. But when she said she was done, I wasn't going to fight her to keep her in a relationship that she didn't want to be anymore. And at the end of the day, I knew I didn't want to be in it either. I knew I'd be happier, down the road. I knew that. There was never a question about that. It was just I would have easily delayed that happiness for the sake of the kids. In the end, I do think everybody was happier for it. And at the end of the day, I was the product of that. My parents got divorced, and I was better off for it. Both my parents remarried, and I've got 4 parents that I'm very close with. A lot of people are only lucky enough to have 2, but I've got 4 parents that I love and respect, and they've been huge impacts in my life, and they're great grandparents. And so, I'm a firm believer that divorce is not always bad. In fact, when somebody tells me I'm going through divorce, I always say, well, should I say congratulations or I'm sorry? Because I'm not, which way do you want me to go? And a lot of people are like super happy that they got divorced. And I do believe that, I don't want to say I'm an advocate of divorce. I hate the idea that people give up so easily. So I don't want to pretend that I'm, a big divorce proponent. But I do feel like if you're going to do it right and go be happy. Like, don't wallow in it. Just if as long as you're pulling that plug, go out and try and be your best self moving forward and live the life that you clearly weren't getting, in your marriage. So.
Oh, for sure. And I definitely wasn't knocking the divorce thing. I just, we all have our own past and things that have helped to shape who we are. And, for me in my situation, it was just that's what my experience was. And who knows if it's going to work or not. Because the days, it's tough.
Yeah,
that's all I can say about it is it's tough.
Yeah, it really is, and some people make it tougher, some people make it harder. But no matter what, it's a battle that you learn from yourself, or you learn about yourself from something like that. It's definitely one of those little points in your life that you're gonna learn who you are real quick. So
how old are you, by the way?
I'm 43.
43? Okay, I'm 45, so I'm about 2 years older than you. What else? So the social media climate thing that is really bothering me. And by the way, you and I both listened to one of the same podcasts, Waking Up. Well, it's not Waking Up anymore. It's
it's a new one with Sam Harris.
Yeah. And that guy's pretty cool. I mean, I listened to him, and I also listened to Jordan Peterson. I
do like him as well. Yeah.
And those two kind of spawned off of Rogan.
They did. They definitely, and they I think they probably earned their name. Sam Harris is. I remember he's famous for the Bill Maher video with Ben Affleck, where Ben Affleck was sort of losing his mind. But what I really like about Sam Harris is that, I think he does identify on the left or as a Democrat, but he's a guy that takes every individual situation and takes it in for itself independently and thinks his way through it. And he's not automatically just going to blame one thing or blame another thing. He likes to talk about it, and that's I've learned to enjoy that. I mean, I lean one way politically for sure, but actually 5 years ago I would have leaned the exact opposite way. But I got to the point where I was like watching and listening and going, "Ew, I don't like this message that I'm getting over here," and so I sort of just found myself over here, at some point, but I think that's. I saw a thing today, I guess, and I was actually really surprised to see it, but actually 43% of Americans consider themselves an independent now. And I was actually encouraged by that, because I think those are actual national numbers, and I didn't realize it was growing that big. But I think those people are the ones that are saying, I'm sick of the left and the right. I'm going to sit in the middle, and I'm going to take every situation for what I think it should be, and I'm just going to break it down independently and think my way through it and react and defend my stance on it and, go from there. But I'm not going to do these blanket sort of attributions of you are this or you are that, or, that those are the things that really bother me. And people are so, I don't want to condemn people for everybody for being brainwashed, but I feel like people just get siloed. They hear only information from the people that they agree with. And then that is just gospel, and any other opinion is evil, or whatever adjective you want to put to it. But I think that's really what bothers me, is that it's just these silos of people, and they're all just throwing rocks at each other, and nobody's actually, so that's why I like Jordan Peterson, I like Sam Harris, I like David Rubin, I like these guys, because they full service found themselves in the middle, and they're saying, let's talk about it. We disagree, but let's respect each other's opinions, and let's have a conversation about it. And that's where I think if you listen to those guys, I put one on there, which is the Armchair Experts. It's a new one. It's only been around for about a year, with Dax Shepard. I've always liked as an actor, and it's kind of a cool podcast because you get a little bit of the Hollywood stuff in there. He has lots of his Hollywood friends in there, but he has conversations. The thing I like about Dax is he's very sort of introspective. He's always thinking about what he's doing and why he's doing it, and why did he say this thing, and why did he think this thing. And I love that type of stuff. And so he gets these people on there, but he puts them in uncomfortable situations where he's talking to them about their real lives. And he's like, what made you say that thing to that person? And I'll be like, oof, I hadn't thought about that. Like, I don't know why I said that. And, it's something you might enjoy it. It's a pretty good one. He has some different experts on there that, another guy that you might really enjoy listening to. He doesn't have his own podcast, but he's been on, I think he's actually been on Rogan, and I think he's been on a few other ones, but his name is Jonathan Haidt. And, just another thinker, he's a guy, he's a professor of some kind, but, he just, I like these guys that really sort of break down and from the middle and say, I'm going to listen to all sides and I'm going to make my decision. So those are the people that I tend to go towards.
Yeah. As far as politically, that's another touchy subject. Yeah,
I know. I'm hesitant to step into it. I'm happy to if you want to. I just didn't, but yeah, I mean, it's yeah, you're right. It's touchy because, those conversations can explode quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I think what everybody can agree with is it's corrupt. It is broken. Mm-hmm. It is meant and set up, in my opinion, when you only have two sides, nothing ever gets done, or somebody has to concede to get something, to concede to the other way to get something else. I don't see how anything gets accomplished that way. And it's time and time and time again since I've grown up. I mean, or was younger, the climate and the landscape doesn't look anything like what I've used to seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say you said so, it's clear. I'll agree with you 100%. It's broken. Like, that's my theory as well. It's broken. And I actually saw a really good video the other day that I can't remember the name of it. I'll give it to you offline, but I'll find it. But it was talking about this. It was talking about how, you know, well, I'll go back to what you said. You had said, you know, you hate how, you know, one side has to concede something to the other to get anything done. And that actually doesn't bother me as much, because that's tried true going back 200 years, where it's like, you know, you ultimately you each side concedes something and you meet in the middle and you make a deal. I don't have a problem with that. My problem is the outside influences. And the outside influences at the end of the day are making the decisions they're making the decisions that the people should be making. But we're no longer empowered. We're not empowered with that anymore. The special interest groups and the money, at the end of the day, they're buying the politicians. I truly believe that. It's happening on both sides. It's not one is worse than the other. And their votes are influenced by that. You know, they have to win re-election. You know, I feel like if they get 6 months to do anything and then they're running for re-election, which means they're having to raise money, and which means they're influenced by money. So there's no doubt that it's broken. The video that I was talking about, which I wish I could remember the name of it, but it essentially is a sort of a grassroots campaign. It's not right, it's not left, it's just, let's take our government back. And the way that they do this, they lay it out. It's about a 10-minute video, and they lay it out really well. But basically, you start from local government, and you get local governments and state governments to start saying, we're not going to allow this to happen anymore. Gerrymandering would be one of the things. The states can actually end gerrymandering. Each individual state can do that. That's one of the things where their corruption starts, because, you know, these guys can basically control their districts by redistricting them to make sure that all the people that agree with them are in the district. It's crazy, and they can do it every election cycle, and the states can stop it. And if enough of the states stop it, like if 10 states stopped it, the theory is, and it's not a theory because it's the way things have worked for years, which is when the states decide to do it, usually the federal government follows close behind. But at the end of the day, you're right. This movement is really just about taking it back and giving it back to the people. You know, not to one side or the other, but just the people taking their power back. And having the government work for us, because right now they just don't. I don't think anybody can argue that they do.
No, they don't at all. And you know, the fact that all that money that you're talking about, the interests and the lobbyists and stuff like that, you know, when one of these congressmen or senators leave, they go straight down to K Street. And it's you know, and then they still have all these connections in the Senate and the Congress, and they're able to play and move and manipulate and, you know, strategize and do all these different things. You know, if there's a cool down period, which needs to happen, we need to go back to term limit, or not go back to, but start going to term limits.
We need to have them.
You know, and you know, a cool off period before any outgoing congressman or senator, you know, has at least 5 years before they can go and be a lobbyist. That way, if you take the value out of it, it'll go away itself.
I agree. I feel like, you know, term limits would it's not going to eliminate it, because, like, let's say you give a person 2 terms, they're obviously going to have to raise money in their first term, but the second term they shouldn't have to worry about raising money. They can just govern. The person that's going to run for their seat next can be running and trying to raise money, but they're not in the position of actually having to be a representative. That, you know, at the end of the day, it seems like a simple solution, but unfortunately, the people that need to vote on that are the people that don't want to give up that power.
No, they don't, because it's taken them 40 years to build these relationships with all these people, and, you know, become, you know, millionaires and figure out how to get rich. You know, if they got there for, you know, 2 terms, it's really hard it would be really hard for them to figure it out. You know, once you filter through, I mean, we probably wouldn't see any of this in our lifetime, but if it changed, and once you filtered through those old timers, and now you're into the new set, you know, it would, you know, you get 2 terms, you can't really figure out a whole lot in, you know, 8 years, especially if you're trying to get reelected and do what you need to do. And then once you're outgoing, you can't do anything for 5 years. Well, all your contacts that you had back in the Senate and the Congress, after 5 years, what if they don't get reelected? There goes some of your pull. There goes some of your power.
Yep.
That just makes the most sense to me. But you're right.
Well, I've never heard that idea. I actually like the one of once you're out of office, you have a 5-year moratorium where you go into the private sector and do your thing, and you can come back into politics as a lobbyist or something else. But you got to wait that 5 years. I actually have never heard that idea. I really like it.
Well, that's the way it used to be. You used to go serve and then go back home to your job. What you used to do, whether you were a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, you wanted to do your service for your country. You didn't go serve in the military. And I understand, we have to evolve as people, and things can't always stay the same forever. But I mean, come on. It's a no-brainer. The government has got way too big.
It really has. I mean, and that's, and I mean, I think, without us actually talking about it, I'm pretty sure you and I sort of land on the same side of it, which I'm sort of I don't want to call myself a straight up Republican conservative, but I lean conservative. I'm usually politically conservative, and socially I'm pretty liberal actually. But the government has never done anything right, in my opinion. There's just very little that they do right. So I don't want them more involved in my life. I want them less involved in my life. And it just seems like that is a hard nut to crack right now.
Yeah, I think I would be. Someone called me a libertarian. I mean, I believe in civil liberties, and the Constitution. But I don't really. I wouldn't consider myself left or right. I mean, I'm kind of middle. I don't want the government telling me what to do. I don't want them making decisions for me. I think that we need a police, obviously, and there's other things that we need. I think AI is going to change everything, and we're going to have to really figure out what we're going to do with these displaced people that don't have any job anymore because a computer or artificial intelligence has sourced them out.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's all kinds of things that are coming down the pipeline at some point in the future. I mean, I'm thinking maybe 10 to 20 years, it's going to be even more different than it is now.
Oh, it is. I mean, the privacy issues with social media and what you're doing online and all that kind of stuff, your cell phone and access to records of your cell phone. Privacy is going to be, I really think I think it's pretty almost self-explanatory. It's going to be the next big issue of the next, 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, it's already becoming that. And, but yeah, I mean, I firmly believe that the government has a place. There's certain things that they should be doing, but they just need to do it within responsible limits. And it just seems like everybody wants to bite off everything with one big bite right now. And, we can make steps to make sure that everybody has health care. It doesn't have to be universal health care for all. I'm not opposed to universal health care for all, especially if somebody can find a way to pay for it. But I guess my thing is, why can't we just take small steps towards that? The people that have insurance, just leave them the hell alone. If they're happy with it, let them have it. The rest of the people, let's find something that we can get those people insured. And it just seems like everything is, well, no, we want to take everything away and give you this. Or, it's just, I feel like there's so many people that want the government to have full control of our lives. I mean, and, with the rise of this, we'll call it, democratic socialist movement with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and all them. And I know that they have, in their hearts, they want to take care of everybody. I appreciate that. I respect that. But my thing is that don't condemn me for it if I don't feel the exact same way that you do. And then the other thing is, don't push it on me if you have no idea how the hell you're going to pay for it. Like, why are we even having a discussion about it until it's an actual viable, opportunity, which it isn't right now. So I don't know. I'm off on my own little tangent there, I think.
Yeah, the whole socialist thing is I mean, we kind of do have some socialist things that we do right now. But I feel like it's just, I don't know. I saw a meme the other day with going through Facebook, and there's tons of memes, and I try not to look at them because I don't want to. I know exactly what they're doing. They're trying to shift your views and your perspective. They're trying to drive you. with these
Yeah.
with these things that they're doing. I mean, Facebook itself isn't, but I mean, they're allowing whoever it is to target people or target a specific group or whatever to put their ideas through. But it was Venezuela, and it had a bunch of different facts about Venezuela and how they led the economy in Mexico or Latin America was number one, or all these facts, good things about them. And then it says in 10 years, all of that disappeared with socialism after socialism was introduced. And I mean, I don't want that here, but I mean, is that really, I mean, how true is that? We don't, nothing is, well, here's what I used to say, or I still do say. You literally have to be an investigative journalist these days to figure out what media that's coming out is the truth. And you have to go through 10 publications and sift through everything and get pieces and bits of the truth, and then try to put it all together, and maybe you might get one kernel of piece of truth.
Yeah. No, and it's funny that you say that, because a lot of the people that I follow on Twitter or follow on social media are independent journalists, because that's the only place I feel like I can get anything close to accurate news. And I'm not even saying accurate where I don't care if it's biased one way or the other. I just want it to be accurate. I want it to be true. I want it to be, I feel like both from the left and the right, there's a lot of, we're going to tell you what we want you to hear, and then that's all that you get. So, yeah, I mean, there's some good investigative / independent journalists out there that you're right. I mean, that's, unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunate or not. I honestly think that's going to be part of the future. I think some of these big news organizations that right now own everything, I think they're going to see their influence really wane in the next 15, 20 years. Like things like CNN and Fox News and, from all different sides. I think their influence is not going to be what it used to be, because people are just going to stop ignoring it. You start to ignore the white noise, and at the end of the day, they're the white noise.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you, that's why my thing was I wanted to talk to regular people, everyday working folks that what is your opinion? Do you in your community, is it the same as it is on the social media communities? And I doubt it. But what thing I do know that's happening is we are not, as communities and where you live, most people aren't talking. Most people aren't, we're busy doing our things. You may see your neighbor and go, hey, hi, bye, whatever. But nobody's talking. Nobody's, back in the olden days, or when civilization first started, or, progressed a little bit, villages, people sat around the fire every night and they talked.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they talked about the day. And, oh, guess what? Little so-and-so, got bit by this spider. Oh, and here it is. This is what it is. And or something bad happened. And, that's how we would know not to go and do those things. And we've come so far away from that nobody, I mean, even though you're out and about during the day, you're doing your job, you're doing your work, you come home, you do your commute, you're isolated. You come home, you don't really have any I don't know if maybe I'm just going by my.
I mean, I had this conversation with a neighbor, and he and I actually hang out every night. We usually hang out for about an hour in the evenings. We just hang out, and sometimes we'll sit out literally put chairs in the driveway, and other times we'll just hang out in the backyard. But we just hang out. And I've had this conversation, and I think this might go back to the 2016 election cycle, where I don't know, maybe not, but it was just we were having this conversation, and I was like, we see all this stuff on social media that's saying all these things that are happening, all these boycotts and protests, and people just losing their mind about X, Y, and Z. And then I said, do you ever see this in your real life? When you go to work, do you have these conversations with people, our neighbors? We don't have these conversations with people. They're all like-minded to sort of what we talk about a lot. I go, where is all this stuff happening other than on social media? And I feel like they're creating a world on social media that is one thing, and it's not congruent with the rest of the world that I'm living in on a day-to-day basis. In some cases, I see it, but it's not as bad as everything it makes it sound. So I agree with you in that respect for sure.
Yeah, at one point I was like, I'm just going to get in my fifth wheel and I'm just going to go across the country and I'm going to podcast along the way and I'm going to just talk to everybody that I come across and get a feel for what the rest of the country thinks, and so everybody else can look and say, hey, look, it's not as crazy as everybody's making it out to be.
Actually, it's funny that you said that. So I remember sitting in my chair, sitting in my living room on election night. Excuse me. Sort of, and I was just ready to soak up all the coverage. I knew everybody was losing their mind because Donald Trump won. I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but I sure as hell didn't vote for Hillary. I wasn't really going to vote for either of them. They were just both crappy candidates. But I remember just sitting in my chair watching all the coverage, and I was bouncing back between Fox News and MSNBC, and CNN, and everywhere. And I remember Van Jones. I think that's his name. He was on CNN, and he was just all kinds of pissed, and he was just being, he was pissed, and you could tell, he wasn't hiding it. And then I remember a year later, and I heard him on something, another show, or whatever it was, and he was actually the one guy that took time away, and he actually traveled the country for like 3 months and went and sat in the living rooms of people in Idaho, in Nebraska, in Tennessee, and all these states that sort of get misunderstood, the flyover states, if you want to call them that, they're calling them the Trump base and all the other things, whatever. He went and actually sat in those living rooms and had conversations with them. And he came back and he said, it absolutely changed my perspective. I sat and I listened to these people. They were everyday people. They weren't racist. They weren't bigots. They weren't this. They weren't that. They weren't all these things that we've been calling them for years, or for at least the last year since Trump really got into the race. And I was really impressed. I'm always impressed when somebody from that side, because this is where my bias is going to come out, but I feel like and maybe it's just because I align with these people like Dave Rubin and Peterson and Sam Harris and stuff like that, where they want to have conversations with everybody. I feel like people on the right are willing to talk a little bit more than the people on the left are really just willing to point. They want to point fingers and blame. And Van Jones definitely falls into the left category, but he was one that actually said, I went and talked to these people. They're good American people. They just want the best for themselves and their family and their friends. And they're not monsters. And he came back and actually said, I used to think this, and now I think this. And I just wish more people, from both sides, would do that. And like you said, that would be so amazing if you could actually do that. Sell the house, jump into the fifth wheel of the motorhome, and just go around the world, talking around the country, and just get a true feel of the perspective that is outside of social media, that is outside of all this other, just, we don't want to call it social media, just media influence, because it's just, you're getting it from every angle. I honestly don't. I feel like I can't open a newspaper. I can't open a magazine. I can't turn on the TV. I can't open Facebook. I can't do anything without getting some sort of biased opinion just shoved down my throat.
Yeah, for sure. I actually unplugged. I got rid of DirecTV, and I just stream everything now. I mean, because it was getting to a point where I was just watching nothing but Netflix documentaries and YouTube anyways. And I mean,
I did the same, except the only thing I did keep is I did YouTube TV, which still has, local cable channels and things like that, but I very rarely watch any of that stuff. I really did it so I can have like my, and all the sports channels and the golf channel and the baseball channel and all those kind of things. And I got the kids and they sort of watch some network shows. But yeah, for the most part, I've cut the cord as well.
Yeah, I did the YouTube TV as well. Just for the kid, Disney Junior and whatnot. And that's almost, 19 months old, and that's proving to be, maybe not the best choice of things to do, because now whenever Minnie Mouse isn't on TV, she throws a fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think everybody was ready for what social media was going to bring to the world.
No, and I don't even think it's just social media. I honestly think it started with just the iPhones. God bless Steve Jobs, but on the other hand, God, that guy I don't think he had any idea how much his invention was going to, change the world. It literally changed the world. I mean, I went with my kids this weekend, and I saw Hamilton. Got lucky enough to go do that, and I remember sitting there before the show and sort of nudged my 14-year-old, and I just looked around, and every single person had that white light on their face before the show was starting. And that used to be, sort of to your point, that used to be the time that people would sit there and talk. They would introduce themselves. Oh, I'm from San Francisco. Oh, I'm from the Bay Area. I'm from down in San Jose, and now we've been waiting 6 years to see the show, or whatever it is. People used to have conversations, and now everyone's just, oh, let's see what's happening on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and everything else. And that's the stuff that makes me sad. I sit at restaurants and watch it, and it's just, those are the things that makes me sad. I mean, my kids are pretty good. Like, when we sit at the table, everybody just puts their phones in their pockets, and we actually can have a conversation. And I'm grateful for that. But I just wish, I just don't think I don't think anybody knew how much these iPhones were going to change the world. They certainly have.
They definitely made it to where, I mean, they're a good thing. I think it's definitely a plus. Back in the day when, I guess, our parents and our grandparents were, what they would go by is the news, and if it was on the news, it was that's what it was. That was the real thing. That was the truth. And now, and people knew that, and they could get away with it because the time that they would actually find out from when something happened to the news cycle and everything else, it was maybe a week. Now it's instantaneous. They can't get away with anything.
Nothing, like literally. Some famous person gets into an accident or gets into a fight at a bar, it is on the internet in 30 seconds. And it has changed the world. I mean, politics, just being an adult in your 30s and 40s, just be able to go out and make some bad decisions on a bachelor party and stuff. Now you pay for those by the time you get home on Sunday.
Oh, yeah, I haven't. I don't really go out and do that much anymore. Just because, once you have a kid and work and commute, and I don't know what you do for a living, but I work construction Monday through Friday, and 6 to 2, and most of the time it's in San Francisco, Oakland, or somewhere not close to where I live. And so I got about 3 hours in commute. It's about 11 to 12 hours a day to that, and then the kid and gym, and by the time that get home and eat, and it's time to go to bed. No time.
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I do automotive marketing or just digital marketing for the automotive industry. I work for an OEM, and my job is just to go around and see those dealerships in the Bay Area. Would just go have meetings with them, so I don't have to get up early. I schedule my appointments at like 10 o'clock. I leave the house at 9, get there at 10, and 10:30, and have a 2-hour appointment. And then I'm on my way home, and I could just completely schedule it around traffic. And so I'm blessed in that way. But I did commute for 12 years. I was going to Hayward, I was going to Richmond, I was going to the city, I was going wherever. And it's only been about the last 5 years that I've got myself into a role where I'm able to work from home. So I'm fortunate there, but no, you're right. I mean, it's even with that, even when I working from home and eliminating my commute, I feel like there's not enough hours in the day to just do everything that needs to be done sometimes.
Yeah, it's literally why it's taken me a year to get this thing going. And, well, not only that, but I mean, there were some other things too, but those are all personal.
Yeah.
The voices in your head that keep you from doing the things that you want to do. Do you know those guys?
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And the funny thing is that I've had the same thought about doing this. I was like, I feel like I have something to say. I feel like I'd be good on a podcast. I used to have this, it was actually a buddy of mine, his girlfriend. Her and I used to just sit there and just cut up with each other, and we used to just make other people laugh, and everyone was always like, you guys need to have a podcast. You guys are hilarious. And I always wanted to do that, and I thought it would be good to, talk about just parenting, not only single parents, but have regular parents on there and talk about the challenges of raising kids these days, and, all those different things. And probably many of the same things that held you back in the beginning. It was just all those voices going, what the hell? nobody wants to listen to your voice. Or nobody's going to, whatever. You can just come up with, all these different excuses. And I don't know that I ever would have done anything until I saw your post come across, and I was like, you know what? I'll jump in. Let's see if I really have something to say. So, I was glad to get the opportunity, but I'm glad that you actually stepped up and did it, because I don't know that I probably would have.
Yeah, I've been listening to you. I mean, you're pretty good. You're not bad at all. You keep your conversation going, and I haven't had to really steer you a whole lot. And I'm no
Well, I appreciate that. That's what I was going to say earlier in my responses. I was trying to keep them short because I can be wordy. So, and my writing can be that way sometimes too. When I'm writing emails for work, I'm like, I've been writing for 30 minutes. I should just have 2 sentences, and I delete the whole thing and just shoot off an email. But yeah, I can definitely get wordy sometimes. So I wasn't worried about having anything to say. I was really just trying to keep those answers short for you earlier.
Yeah, and I also was, looking to maybe have a co-host at some point. If I have chemistry with somebody when I'm going through these interviews, I was thinking about, maybe that'll work. Because it's really difficult to do one of these things by yourself if you're, because you're gonna
Well, I can imagine the mechanics of actually whatever you're doing on your end to produce the thing, sort of get things recording and not only doing the technical side of it, but then you're having a conversation, and the idea is to keep that conversation rolling, and so you got to be sort of involved and on top of it and all that kind of stuff. So I can imagine it would be tough to be juggling both. I'm not sure if I could be doing both. I'm having a hard enough time just sitting here doing it on this end. But doing both, I can imagine it would be a little bit of a challenge.
Well, personality-wise, when the example I was thinking of was Guys We Fucked. You ever listen to them? The two girls on
Who
there.
Who is it?
They're 2 girls. They're comedians, and they have 2 completely different personalities. And it works because one of them.
If I remember the name of it, it's sort of a. I think I know who you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it, but if I remember the name of it, it was something.
The Guys We Fucked.
Yes, that's it. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry. Did you say that earlier? Did I miss that?
Yeah, The Guys We Fucked, and it was Christina and Corinne, I think. Mm-hmm. And I don't know which one's what, but I know that when I'd listen to them, one of them would just absolutely get on my nerves every time she opened her mouth. But what kept me there was the other one, because she would balance out the annoying part of the other girl.
That was okay. So did you hear about him for the first time on Rogan? I think the first time I heard him was on Rogan, and that was my exact sort of response to it, which is like, this one, she needs to not talk as much. This one needs to talk more. And then I think I did listen to a few of their podcasts. I don't think I was able to get into it on a regular basis, but I did listen to 4 or 5 of them. And I definitely remember them. I got into a little bit, but for whatever reason, they didn't stick with me.
Yeah, same here. I went through about a 4 or 5, maybe even a 6-month run with them, and then I just kind of let it go. I'm like, it's not. I mean, they had some good points and they had some good views, and but I think what killed it for me was the nasally one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do that a lot with the podcast. So, I mean, I guess you sort of have to. They're not going to all hit home runs. You just got to try a few of them out. I tried Jason Stapleton, I think is his name. Have you checked him out?
No, I haven't.
I think that's his name, Jason Stapleton. He's got the "Don't Tread on Me" as a sort of that emblem as the cover of his podcast, and he's definitely sort of a libertarian down the middle guy, but I gave it like 5 or 6, and it was just, first of all, he would take these breaks where I understand the commercial breaks for all the podcasts I listen to have commercial breaks, but he was like selling you stuff and, of his own stuff. It was almost like Alex Jones type stuff. And I'm like, okay, enough of this. And I liked what he had to say, but I just couldn't get into the format that he was pushing. And, but yeah, I mean, there's so much out there, and they're so different. And I think that's why I was always sort of like, having that idea that, man, I'd sort of like to give this a try. But, I guess one of the things that always held me back is I feel like the guys that make it today are guys that sort of already have a jump start. Dr. Phil just started his own. It's like, really? You don't have enough with your show and everything else, and now you got to jump into the podcast mix. And I feel like most of these guys are sort of, they're taking their name and then running with it, and that makes them successful, which is great. But it's harder for someone like you or I to sort of all of a sudden build ourselves up. But it, like you said, the guys we fuck, it's not impossible. Those girls did it. I don't think they were well known at all. They just captured captured some people's attention, and they built a following off of it, I guess.
Well, I've got about, I'd say 20 that I just sort of scroll through. Some of them I started, some of them, like the other one we just talked about, it just sort of there. But yeah, it may be a little saturated, but I think there is nothing like it. There's nothing like having somebody, because when I listen to them with my Bluetooth while I'm working. So 8 hours a day, I'm consuming nothing but content. And it's like I have these people in my ear all day long, listening, a fly on the wall, if you want to call it that, to a conversation, to, it's crazy. If I'd had these when I was growing up, I probably, wouldn't have made some of the choices, or at least, I'm hoping I wouldn't have made some of the choices that I did, because you have other, you can just punch in whatever it is you want to know, or area 100%. That you're having trouble in, and you want to, explore, bam, it's right there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And there's this unlimited library of information, with on the internet, but specifically with podcasts. And yeah, I mean, it's funny to think, I hadn't really ever thought about that, but if you think back about the influence it may have had on you at 17, 18, 19 years old, or 25 years old, it's just amazing how much of a different time it is today than when we grew up. I remember just when I was raising kids, mine are teenagers now, but when they were 10 years ago, when they were all little kids running around, we had the Suburban with the movies in the headrest, and it was just, I used to think, God, you guys are so spoiled. I used to have to sit there and play Travel Connect 4, with my brother or my mom to entertain myself in the car. And now you guys have either got Disney movies, or now they got their iPads and their cell phones and everything else. So it's just a different world.
Yeah, no more slug bug.
No more slug bug, exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'd explore with you if you were game for it.
Doing the co-hosting?
Yeah, why not?
I would actually, I would love to explore it for sure.
I mean, a lot of things. So basically, with this podcast, nowhere to go but up. I named it that because that can apply to so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
It can apply to where we are as society. It can apply to, where people are, bottoms that you've hit in your life, how you got through them. I mean, it could be anything. And once you start it, they kind of take on a life of their own. You have a premise, and
Absolutely.
you try to stick to it. But a lot of the times, I mean, once you get one going, you get on a roll, and it just sort of morphs into whatever it's going to be, and it'll either work or it won't.
Yeah, no, I'm I think it's I think the idea of I like the idea of nowhere to go it up, because it's just the title has a positive connotation to it. It's like, listen, we're starting from the bottom and we're going up, and we're going to climb this ladder and get out of this hole, or whatever it might be. So it just has a positive ring to it right from the start. So it would be something that would capture people's attention just from the name. I think it's a good name.
All right, so we're coming up on an hour here. What social media would you like to plug for yourself?
Gosh, I mean, I think the only one I'm really, I mean, I'm on Facebook, but that's mostly just sharing pictures of the kids and things like that. But my Twitter handle is just Ryan Brown 98. I do a lot of sports stuff too, so I'm sharing funny things for sports and stuff like that. But I follow a lot of political people on there, so I'll sometimes comment and get into some comment strings and things like that, or share things. But so I'd say I'm most active on the Twitter more than anything else. I'm still learning Instagram. I can't figure that one out for the most part. I got to have my daughter come over and show me things on it, and it's kind of sad because I'm in digital marketing, so you'd think I'd be good at this stuff, but some of these things, like I won't even mess with Snapchat. So anyway, yeah, Ryan Brown 98 at for Twitter.
Yeah, Instagram is. I've tried to figure it out, and I would go up to 300 followers, and I wouldn't post anything for a week, and I'd come back and I'd have 250. I'm like, jeez.
Yeah.
You guys are killing me, man.
Yeah, they're fickle. You got to keep them entertained out there.
Nothing like having an app that makes you feel like you're nothing.
Yeah, it's instant judgment. That's what it is. Lets you know exactly where you stand with society.
All right. Well, we made it through my first podcast, and we managed to eat up an hour of time, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. I appreciated it.
Yeah, no problem, man. And I will talk to you as soon as we get off here. I'll talk to you off air.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate it.
All right, Ryan Brown. Thank you.
All right. Talk soon.
Thanks for listening to the show, and thanks to Ryan for sharing his story. So if you listened to my first episode, you would have seen or heard how much I jumped around and had a hard time staying on a topic. So in an attempt to try to correct that, I've written down everything that I want to say. So if it sounds like I'm reading, it's because I am. And I'm sure the more I do this, the more my thoughts will stay together, and I can convey whatever it is I'm trying to say to you in a manner in which you can follow. So one of the things that I've learned in my life is that relationships are hard to keep fresh and vibrant. If you aren't with the right person, we tend to evolve away from one another. This tends to happen quite a bit. At least in my own life it has. My opinion is we don't take enough time in the beginning to really do our due diligence to see if the people that we are considering a relationship with are really right for us. It's very easy to mistake lust for love. I've fallen victim to this myself, where the sexual chemistry is so good that you forget about everything else and all the important stuff that you need to know about people before you actually get involved with them in a relationship. Before you know it, it's 6 months, you're in a relationship. And aside from the sex, that has slowed down drastically, unless you're both nymphos. Once you are stuck together, having to actually talk to one another, you realize that you don't have enough in common to sustain staying together. This is just one example. If you have other examples, please share them at nowheretogobutupnow@gmail.com. This is how we learn from each other. People that are close to you can tell you all day long what they think you're doing wrong, and it usually goes in one ear and out the other. Resonating with a complete stranger that does the same shit we do is the bump we need sometimes to change our shit and get out of our own way. Episode 3 will be the start of the dating part of this podcast. I'll be alternating between life struggles and dating episodes. I think a show that is 100% bottoms might get a little depressing. I need some funny shit in between. If you have a dating topic you want to hear about, or dating stories you want to share, dating apps you want to talk about, like or dislike, feel free to send me an email. If you can't write it down, my ways to contact me are in the show notes. Last point. If you get something out of this, please rate and review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. Until the next time, keep it 100 and stay true to yourself. Everything else is just noise.